Hello, good evening. Welcome back to the Tunnel Podcast as we review the midweek action and loads of talking points when it comes to managerial appointments and sackings this week as well. Delighted as always to say I'm joined by Tom Goff. Tom, how are we doing?
Yourself?
Yeah, mate, really good. Looking forward to the weekend ahead. In my personal life, got a bit of adulting going out, doing a bit of this and that, so it'll be nice. And listen loads of football as well. So up and down the country. So I'm sure we'll get through some of that at the end of the show as well. But listen, as I said, loads of action on the park, but we need to start off it because we've been talking about it for the last week or 2 weeks. The managerial appointment or vacancy at Coventry has now been filled. Frank Lampard, the man that's been selected. Give us your initial thoughts on that appointment, please.
Yeah, I don't really rate it, to be honest with you, mate. I think we've spoke about it a couple of times, haven't we? Because obviously it seems like it's been dragging on for weeks and weeks. I know it's only really been a couple of weeks, has it? But it does seem like it's been dragging on for ages. But yeah, I just find it a really odd appointment. You know, getting rid of Robbins, and then bringing someone like Lampard in. I just think it's a really, really big risk, from the club, and I can't quite get my head around it. I think if they got rid of Robbins and then, I don't know, convince someone like David Moyes, for example, or even someone of that kind of stature, like if they brought someone like that, and then you'd think you could sit there and say, well, it made sense. They brought in someone with more experience and more pedigree, and managed at a higher level, etc., etc. But I just think, like I said, Lampard, he hasn't really achieved much, has he, in his managerial career? I know it sounds a bit harsh, but he's almost a little bit kind of ridiculed, isn't he? In terms of what he's achieved so far as a head coach, and I think it's a big risk, mate. And we've obviously been having a chat today. It seems that within the club as well that there seems to be people on the board, people involved behind the scenes that have got the same kind of opinion as me, and that they weren't keen on the appointment. They weren't too sure, and they tried to air their concerns to the owner, Doug King, but he sounds like Lampard was his preferred choice early doors, and he's kind of stuck to his guns, and he's got his man. So
let's talk about that then. In terms of the chairman and how sort of tunnel vision he's been in terms of this appointment. I listened to Rob Gurney, the BBC Sports correspondent, speaking about this earlier, and he said that Lampard is Doug King's choice, and he has to deliver a return to the top flight for the first time in a quarter of a century. That seems a big ask where they're at the moment. But King has early doors set out his aspirations and his targets for Frank Lampard. Do you think Lampard is maybe bitten off more than he can chew here? Because in recent windows, Coventry haven't spent a lot of money. I know we spoke about it previously. Championship clubs aren't spending a lot of money as a rule of thumb, but you would look at that squad and think, is it equipped enough to even push for the playoffs this season? I would say maybe not.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I don't think they've got a bad squad, Coventry. Look, I think they've got a good squad for this level. I think they should be they should be doing better first and foremost. They definitely should be sitting a lot better in the division considering the players they've got. But then I think if you look at the kind of top 6 or 7 as things stand now, I think all those teams easily have a better starting 11, probably much more better squad depth than Coventry have at this moment in time. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what his aims and targets are for this season. He signed a 2.5-year deal, so that indicates that Doug King is willing to give Lampard a bit of time, and that maybe he's, I don't want to say written off this season, because anything can happen in the Championship, but he's maybe kind of don't say willing. You know the point I'm trying to make. You almost accepted maybe that it might be difficult this season, to achieve a playoff spot. But then, look, saying that, let's bring the table up quickly. What are they on? They're on 17 points currently. Middlesbrough and ourselves are on 27. So, 10 points, all right. I think in the Championship, that can be easily, closed down. So, but I tend to agree with you. I think it's going to be a tough ask for him this season. I just think when you take in consideration everything, I think a lot of the Coventry fans are upset. The sacking of Robbins. They're still very upset about it. And from what I've seen on social media, I think there's probably more that are disappointed with the appointment of Lampard than happy with it. So he's got it's going to be a tough challenge for him. It's going to be a really tough challenge because he's obviously he's got to try and improve things on the pitch and get the players on board with his approach and his philosophy and how he wants to play, and he's got to start picking up some points, but then it's going to take him a lot to get the Coventry fans on side as well. I feel winning games is going to be a good start, putting points on the board, but I think there's a little bit more to it than that because of what Robbins did for the club, how highly he was regarded by the Coventry fans, how devastated they were for him to leave. It's almost like Lampard's got to work even harder, if you know what I mean, to try and get those Coventry fans on side.
Well, not only that, he's also got to try and get people within the club on side, because if you have a read of the piece that came out from the Mail Sport that you shared with me earlier on today, the owner was kind of encouraged to look elsewhere. He then set his sights on Lampard, and then from there, top club officials kept out of the loop on the final details as they were being discussed. I mean, Lampard, he's got a lot to do right from the off, and this is almost, I would say, last chance saloon for Frank Lampard in terms of a decent level of coaching.
Yeah, it definitely feels like that. I think, all that stuff that's come out today, that Daily Mail article, I just think it's the worst possible start, isn't it, for Lampard, because it's out there in the open now that not everyone in the club wanted him. Like I said to you, I know it seems like there's more Coventry fans who are disappointed with the appointment and happy with it. And some of the footballers, they're going to be some of the guys in the squad, the team, they're going to be looking at this, and they're going to be, some of them surely are going to be kind of thinking, this is a bit of a mess, this is a bit of a shambles. He's straight into the frying pan, isn't it, for him? And I was having a look as well, who his next few games are, to see, what kind of running has he got to try and, get the fans on board quickly. They've got Cardiff at home, which probably a good game, isn't it? Because Cardiff are struggling a bit again in the league, aren't they? And have dropped down into the bottom three. So that's a good start. But then he's got Millwall away and West Brom away in his two games after that. So, he's got some tricky games around the corner. So, I tell you what, I am really interested to see how it plays out, because, like you said, just come back to what you said. I think you make a great point in that it does feel a little bit like last chance saloon for him. I think, he got, because of his name, because of his status in the game as a player, I think he got the Derby job because of that. And then, he's undoubtedly got the gig at Chelsea and Everton because of who he is, because of his name. He's managed to get another top job, Coventry, big club in the Championship, have done well in recent seasons. Yeah, it feels like if he makes a mess of this, then I think it could be it then in terms of at least getting jobs in the top two tiers of English football. You know what I mean? So, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, because my head's telling me that I think it's going to end in misery. If you were to put me on the spot now and say, do I think it's going to work out for Coventry? Are they going to pick up? Are they going to push for a playoff spot? maybe even going into next season, do you think they're going to kind of keep on improving? My head's telling me no. I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's going to find it tough. I think as well the Championship has changed a hell of a lot since he last managed in it. I think it's even tighter. It's more competitive. I just think, I've just got a sneaky suspicion that he's going to get found out. So we'll see.
Listen, there's a lot of doom and gloom. Let's try and pick up some positivity. I think if you're a Coventry fan and you're sitting there tonight thinking, what do we get if we bring in Frank Lampard? A positive would be that he does like to work with young players. He does like to try and improve young players. The owner himself has said that it's the kind of name that's going to elevate the club into, maybe sort of more forward, the forefront of, sports programmes and talking points. So obviously where he wants the club to go. He's the first appointment for Doug King since his takeover in 2023 as well. So I think my camera's got jaundice. I don't know what's happened to it there. But I think if you're a Coventry fan and you're looking for positives, it is that he can improve young players. Done it at Chelsea. I think he handed Billy Gilmour his debut. Look at him now. I think we're all just kind of desperate for Frank Lampard to go somewhere and get his teeth into a project and kind of hang around. The last few jobs have kind of been maybe sweeper up pieces and then not hanging around to see it through. It'd be nice for him to see a job through, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I agree. Look, I don't want any man. I don't. I love Frank Lampard as a player. So it's not like I'm one of these who, maybe didn't like him as a player. So I want to see him fail as a coach. I absolutely loved him as a footballer. I there's not any part of me that wants to see him fail. I think I do definitely feel though that there's certain managers who are kind of about at the minute who have got jobs maybe due to their name and what they've done as a player, and I'm one of these who I don't think that's fair. I think there's young talented head coaches out there who might not necessarily get the opportunities they deserve because of the likes of Lampard, because of the likes of Rooney. Their name has got him a job. You're right. Look, there's definitely positives to take, and I think what he's he seems to have this kind of passion for bringing youngsters through, doesn't he? And bringing them into the first team setup and making them a prominent part of the first team. And like you said, he had success with that at Derby, and he had success with that definitely at Chelsea as well. And I think last pod we did, I spoke to you, didn't I? I said that Coventry have had some good success of late, and unearthing a few promising youngsters from their academy. And so look, it's we could be talking on a few months down the line towards the end of the season. We got it completely wrong. He could do with Coventry what he did with Derby. I just think there's just more factors that are pointing me in the direction that he's going to struggle than maybe make a success out of it. But it's I hope it will. It's not, I've got as well. Coventry. I've got a bit of a soft spot for Coventry. I've got a couple of mates who are Coventry fans, and just Midlands clubs in general. I always hope that they do well, except obviously when we're playing them. So I've got a bit of a soft spot for him. I hope they do pick up, and I hope he makes a success of it. But someone pressed me now and asked me, really, what do I think? How is it going to play out? I think he might struggle.
Listen, absolutely. Time will tell. He's certainly under pressure from the off, as you say. Home game against Cardiff at the weekend, and Coventry fans will be going there hoping he gets expecting he gets 3 points to get himself on the way. We'll watch that one with bated breath. Well, listen, as Frank Lampard was getting appointed, the German Walter up at Hull was getting his marching orders. A real kind of barren run. I think it was 9 without a win. Just not. I think don't have a win since early October. Right call for you?
Yeah, 100%, mate. I think I'm surprised. It's kind of. I think he probably had a couple more games. I thought he was going to go probably a little bit earlier. I just think that it just had kind of disaster written over it. Written on it from the start for me. Yeah, I just think the decision at the start of the season to get rid of Liam Rosenior was just an absolutely ridiculous one.
Disgrace. It was an absolute disgrace.
Yeah, 100%.
Seventh in the league, was it? Or
yeah, and there's a lot of people were kind of pointing and trying to justify it by saying, "Oh, well, look at, he should have done better when, given the fact he had, Liam Delap, Fabio Carvalho, Philogene from Villa. They had a really good team, and they're disappointed. They should have made the playoffs, really, the quality that they had. But look, they were very close to it. I think they were only a point off it come the end of the season. So, the decision to get rid of Rosenior was just absolutely absurd. And then, you're then kind of looking, well, who they're going to bring in? Who's a better option than the guy who's just got you to the playoffs, missed out by a point. He obviously knows the squad now. He knows the players. They know how he wants to play. I know they lost a couple of their key guys, but still, there's still a good core of the players there from the season beforehand. And they kind of throw it all away and take a risk on Tim Walter, who was Werder Bremen, I believe, in I think he was Bundesliga 2, I think. It just seemed a really odd decision, as soon as it was announced, really. And I think it's just played out, hasn't it? How I think the vast majority of people, even I bet you if you were to even ask, the Hull fans themselves, I think the vast majority of them would have, said that they can't see this going well because, he came in and he had this philosophy of wanting to play football and play out from the back at all times. But I remember quite early on people saying you got to have the players, you got to have the players available to do that. Even Rosenior wasn't kind of playing as attack minded and and he had a much better squad at his disposal last season. So, I remember just a couple of games early on, I was watching thinking, he's going to have to adapt here. He's going to have to change if he's going to want to stay in this job. And he was reluctant to do that. He kind of stuck with his philosophy right till the very end, and it cost him. But look, what I do want to say though is I feel a bit sorry for the Hull fans because I just think they've just got another brain dead owner who thinks they know best. I don't know if you've seen much of that. Is it Akun Ilikali, I think you pronounce it?
He's deemed the Turkish Simon Cowell. I don't know if that's about his looks or the fact that he can hammer a number one hit home, but he does look like a bit of a showman. He's
just a bit of a he's just a bit bonkers, mate. Every time I've seen him interviewed or I've kind of read his interview, and he just seems, as a fan, you just want, a level-headed owner who just kind of keeps themselves out the limelight, who makes the best decisions for the club, lets people with, more experience and more knowledge make the big decisions, or at least let them input into, the big decision making. But he does exactly the opposite. He loves the limelight. He loves, talking as much as possible about himself and about he just seems an absolute nightmare. And it was funny. I was reading just before we come on that apparently before the game he was asked what if they lose this against Sheffield Wednesday, and he outright promised that he wasn't going to get rid of Walter. He said, "I'm not sacking him. I'm not sacking him. We're working towards this. There's this philosophy, and it's going to take time to build. And I'm right behind him, etc., etc. I'm not going to sack him, not a chance." And then, literally hours after the game,
he's gone.
He's gone. So,
do you think that would maybe insinuate that he's got somebody lined up, or he's maybe had conversations? Because I don't see this one lasting as long as the Coventry saga has. I think we'll probably see an appointment within the next 5 to 7 days.
I think so. It wouldn't surprise me if, like you said, he'd already offered the job to someone whilst Walter was still in charge, because that's the kind of
it goes on.
Mate.
It goes on, that sort of stuff. It does go on.
It goes on, and he is exactly the type that would have no qualms in doing that whatsoever. You know, like I was just saying, he's just a total mad dog and he doesn't really care, like, you know. So I think, yeah, you're probably right. And it seems, I think we were having a little chat earlier, doesn't it, that former Watford and Fulham boss, Jukanovic, is getting talked up for the job. And yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if something's announced within the next couple of days and then we find out, you know, shortly afterwards that, that they were tapped up whilst Walter was still taking training sessions and getting ready for games, etc. So,
we'll come on to Jukanovic in a minute. I just want to sort of the final nail in the coffin for me with Tim Walter. It was a couple of weeks ago, the draw with Pompey, and he comes out afterwards and says our fans should be more like Portsmouth fans and cheer when we're losing. At that point, you can, once you start calling the fans out, it's a slippery slope, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%, mate. I didn't catch that, to be honest with you. I missed that, but yeah, you're absolutely.
He then followed up a couple of days later in the presser when he was kind of sort of pushed on. Why have you said that? Was it why he said? I said, "Tell you what, I'll meet them for a pint and we'll have a chat about it." It just the head had gone at that point.
I think so. Yeah, it sounds to me then there was almost a bit of like he knew his time was up, didn't he? Because yeah, as soon as you start saying stuff like that, like even when there's a very good chance that you're going to lose your job and you're right on the edge of the cliff, like you're still praising the fans, aren't you, and giving them credit, because look, they're spending their hard-earned cash to go and follow you around, all over the country. You never start laying into your own fans, do you? So you're right. Yeah, as soon as you start doing that, then. And look, maybe then, maybe you have to give the owner a little bit more credit as well, because I think as an owner, and the man in charge is criticising your fan base, you're asking for trouble, aren't you? So maybe his hand was maybe forced a little bit. And look, he was doing a crap job as well. So let's not beat around the bush. They weren't doing particularly well, were they? So, but I just think he loves himself a little bit too much, that whole owner, and he just needs to rein it in a bit.
He's another one that goes, before the games and has pints with the fans and chats them. So as you say, they'll be voicing their opinions to him if he's making himself that visible. Just on Jukanovic then, because as you mentioned there, he's got championship experience at the very top as well of the division. Most recently at Sheffield United, but it didn't really work out for him, you have to say. Looking at that, looking at Hull, as poor as they've kind of been under Walter, they haven't really had any massive doings. It's a goal here or there. Do you think they'll be looking at that if it is indeed going to be him, thinking there's something to work with there? I can maybe get these going.
Yeah, potentially. Look, we beat them 2-1. Yeah, a couple of weeks ago. It was just before the international break. We beat them 2-1 at their place, and they weren't terrible, mate. I tell you what, they had some really good spells in the game. It was just kind of what I just said earlier on in that they just didn't seem to, there was times where they played it out from the back and it worked and it was really effective, broke through the lines, and got into some nice positions and played some nice football. But then there was times where you think, you got to mix it up. You can't always do it. You can't always take this approach. Play a bit direct at times when you need to. Don't take those risks. When you could see the players had almost been told, like, no, you have to stick to the plan. You got to try and play it out from the back. And it just put them in all sorts of problems. But
just on that then, because I think that's a pertinent point with the whole of football. There's a load of managers that want to play it from the back when the players can't do it, okay? Yeah. So the players you just say there have been given instruction and they just follow it out to the letter because they think if I don't, the manager's going to come for me. The players are almost hiding behind the instruction. There's no sort of rule of thought anymore for guys to go out and just perform and or understand the situation and maybe deviate from that now. It's got to be to the letter now, and teams just can't do it.
I think it's a good point, man. I think it's kind of more and more prevalent in football now, where the coaching side of things is just cranked up a notch, hasn't it? Season after season.
It's too much.
Yeah, too much. That's what I mean. It's got to a point now where you're right, and Hull, we're using Hull as an example now, but I even think of my own team, West Brom, and I know we're in a healthier position than Hull, but there's times you can literally see it as a fan where they're playing to, like you said, how they've been set out to play and the strict instructions that they have. You can almost see it sometimes on the pitch when there's maybe the opportunity to do something else, maybe take a risk,
take a risk,
move forward, and it's almost like you can see it. Like they'll come back on themselves and they'll make the pass that they've been told to make, to set up the triangle and set up the the next phase, etc., etc. And yeah, it's a great comment, and I agree with it 100%. It's like, and that's what was just kind of baffling me with Hull, is that, like, they lost some really key players in the summer. They had a worse squad than they did last season, and yet he's come in and he wants to play really expansive, like I said, possession based, playing out from the back at all costs football, when you just haven't got the players to do it. It was like, Southampton last season, Russell Martin, that was his mindset, that was his mantra. It nearly cost him promotion, just insisting on playing like that, 24/7, every game, every match. They were fortunate in that they had a ridiculous squad for the Championship, which ultimately got them over the line. But he didn't have anywhere near that quality at Hull. So
I know we're deviating slightly here, but do you think the Maverick, the Paul Gascoignes of this world, for instance, have gone now because it's been coached out the game?
100%. I just, it's, everyone likes to point the finger at Pep, don't they? Like, that he's the one that kind of changed the face and the philosophy of football. But I definitely think there's some truth to it, in that it's like you said, it's almost overcoached now, football. And like you said, that individuality, that flair, that, like, the maverick player just seems to be a thing of the past now, doesn't it? In that every player has a role that they have to fulfill. No one's really given a free role anymore, so to speak, to just do what they want to do, and that bit of flair and that skill and that ability will come through at some point, and the rest of the team will cover for him. Every player now is just a well-oiled machine that has his job on the pitch, knows what he needs to do, doesn't deviate.
They're coached to, when they get the ball, they should have three options to go, and that's it. One of those three options should be on, and if it's not, they don't know what to do. And as you say, if there's another option on that's maybe more fruitful and a slightly more of a risk, they still don't want to do it because they don't know what the reaction is going to be from the coach. So I agree with what you're saying. I think, I don't know if you saw the clip with Roy Keane a few weeks ago, saying he watched the MK Dons game and keeper was kind of passing out from the back, and he's going, playing for MK Dons, mate, just get it up the park. Do you know what I mean? You don't need to be, you pass. Apparently the goalkeeper had, 20 touches in his own box in the first half with his feet, which is mental. Is that, as you say, I don't think Pep's to blame. I think English football has a responsibility to develop its own style of play, and I think we're too keen in this country and in Scotland as well to copycat.
100%, mate. It's even worse than that. I went last season. I went to see Rochdale twice in the. It's not called the conference anymore, but it's the conference equivalent.
Panorama.
Yeah. I went to see them twice last season. They were trying to do it, mate. Trying to play out from the back, centre backs either side of the goalkeeper, and I was sat there with the fans, and they were just going, "What are we trying to do? Like, we're bloody Rochdale in the conference, like." Just lump it up, mate. Lump it up. Yeah. It's not like we're not expecting it. Get it up there, hit the big man, cause some problems. It's almost like that's what they want to see. Like, what are you doing? Trying to play out from the back and opening the pitch up. And oh, mate, it was brilliant listening to some of the fans at those games, honestly. So Yeah, it's funny.
We'll draw a line under Hull. As we say, if we get the appointment, then we'll come back to that. But I do think that Jukanovic would be a good shout. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. Look, he's got a couple of promotions from the division. I know it didn't go well at Sheffield United, but I think there was a lot of stuff going on at the club at the time, wasn't there? But you can't ask for more, really, and bringing in a guy who knows how to get teams out of the division, who's got experience there. So, yeah, I think it'd be a good fit for Hull. I think, yeah.
Okay. Let's turn our attentions to the bottom of the table. QPR, as you said, huge win for them. I know Portsmouth haven't played a couple of games due to postponements. However, it keeps QPR neatly in the mixer, pardon me, with obviously, a point behind Hull, 2 points behind Cardiff, and 3 points behind Plymouth, Preston, Oxford, and Coventry as high as 17th. So, we did spend a bit of time a couple of weeks ago talking about Cifuentes, and we hoped we could get it going. Have you seen the highlights from the game? Because I actually think it's an interesting one. You see the 2-0 victory, but Cardiff absolutely peppered. Is it Paul Nardi in goal? It was like a one-man defence at times. It was an absolutely sterling display.
I saw. Yeah, I just caught that the short highlights from Sky, but even in there, I kind of got the idea that maybe the scoreline didn't tell the whole truth. And then I was, just before we come on, I was just reading the report, and they were waxing lyrical about the QPR goalkeeper. So it does sound like they got a bit lucky, but look, I think they probably deserve a bit of luck. Like you said, we've spoke about them a few times in that we've been surprised at how poorly they've started the season. We're both fans of Cifuentes, and that they've got, they had a good end to last season, and they've got a good team for this level. So we just couldn't get our heads around why they were, sitting at the bottom and starting to get cut adrift slightly. But every time I'd seen them, they'd been in matches. They were always competing. They weren't getting, absolutely pummeled and torn apart. They were giving people a good game. It just maybe weren't getting that bit of luck. Sounds like they got it. So I don't think we can begrudge that of them. But you've got to take them with a pinch of salt, haven't you? Because if they'd been absolutely solid 2-0 win away from home, then you're thinking, it might have been turned a bit of a corner here, and can we push on? But it sounds like Cardiff were really unlucky. On another day they could have been the ones getting the 3 points. And like we said, I think if Cardiff would have won that match, I think that might have been it for him. I think he probably would have got the chop, because then Cardiff would have pulled away a little bit further, and they'd be starting to get cut adrift slightly, leading into Christmas. It wasn't looking pretty for him. So that was a massive win for him.
You look at Zancella, the big Slovak forward, brought him in from Swiss side Lugano in the summer. He hadn't scored until the other night. He getting a lot of stick from supporters. He comes up the brace. The first goal is an absolutely stunning finish.
Yeah, well, this was the thing, because he was getting talked up at the start of the season. It's been a really shrewd signing because he performed well. I remember him performing well in the Euros, and I don't think QPR spent a lot of money on him, and there was a few of us interested in bringing him into the club. So, they had really high hopes that he was going to do the business for him. But from everything I've read, he's just really struggled to adapt to the Championship. And then I think it was the game before when they drew with Stoke, he missed a penalty. So he's thought, I can break my duck here. Let's tuck away this penalty, and he's missed the penalty. So I think they were starting to fear the worst. But look, it obviously shows character, doesn't it? And like you said, that one of the goals was a cracking goal, and they'll be hoping now that. He can push on, and that he's settled in. I'm just looking, I'm just looking at their team. I do think that they shouldn't be in a relegation fight. Looking at some of the experience they've got in there and some of the players they've got in their team, I do think that they should be doing much better. So, they'll be looking to push on now and use that. Let me have a look.
Is the trouble, Tom, that the other night was only the third clean sheet of the season. The previous two had been 0-0 draws with Sunderland and Burnley, respectfully. That was the first time they'd won a game with a clean sheet. Is that the area of concern? They need to try and, the goalkeeper was, a man possessed the other night, keeps the ball at the back of the net. If they can keep it okay at the back, they've got something to build on. And this fella, if he can go on a bit of a run, then they might find themselves climbing up the table, maybe breathing down the likes of Frank Lampard's neck.
Yeah, 100%. Look, I think that's kind of what I was saying, in that when I've seen him play, he obviously likes to try and play football. He's not one of these that just kind of, again, it's kind of ties into the conversation we were just having about Walter and Hull, and these managers almost being a little bit too stubborn and not being willing to change their approach. Maybe Cifuentes was leaning in that way because, every time I was watching them play, they were trying to play, entertaining football, nice, attacking football, playing on the front foot, when maybe, considering on how poor the run it was they were going on, that maybe sometimes you got to scale it back and think, let's just sort the defence out. Let's do some work on our defensive shape. Next couple of games, just try and grind one out. Like you said, total focus on keeping the opposition out. Because if you can keep them out, you at least got a point. And then making capitalising on a counter attack or a set piece goal.
A big guy up front with a bit of grace. The first goal comes from a ball into the box that he controls wonderfully, and the second one's a kind of long ball up top that he gambles on. Defender gets caught under it, and he goes away and scores. So, as you say, keep it tight at the back, and you've got something to hit up top. There's no shame in playing like that, but these foreign managers have issue with it.
Well, it's not even that, mate. It's like we're talking about. Mate, I've just had a warning on my phone. I thought it was charging up. I'll keep talking. I'm just going to plug it in. I think it's a really good point, and it's a really good kind of conversation, because I tell you another who I think is a bit guilty of this same kind of mindset is Rooney. Rooney.
I thought you were going to say Danny Roll then. Rooney.
No, well, I think Rooney as well, in that, I think sometimes these managers, I don't want to sound offensive, and but you have to kind of almost accept, your status in the division where you are, and I think sometimes you got to accept that, it's all well and good wanting to play football the right way, try and entertain your fans and score goals, but then you've got to get that balance right with, staying in the division and getting points on the board. And I do think some of these managers, who are down there, we talked about Walter, who's obviously got the sack, we're talking about Cifuentes, Rooney back in the conversation now. I think sometimes they need to just try and set up, really, make themselves difficult to beat, just make themselves really dogged, really organised defensively, and just make it difficult for the opposition, and and try and nick a goal and try and nick 3 points here and there. But instead, they seem to be just just kind of insistent on this, this kind of philosophy of trying to play football against absolutely everyone in the division, home or away, and it's just not getting them anywhere. But then the following week they do the same thing. It's like, what's that saying about doing the same thing over and over again, and just getting the same results? I think some of these guys are guilty of that, because you watch them play and you think, well, it's all well and good having like I said, a philosophy and a style, and how you want to play, etc., etc. But if they ain't doing well, if they ain't getting you any points and you're losing every week, you got to mix it up. You got to change something. And some of them just seem, completely reluctant to do that. So,
again, that I feel that that's coming from the top. You listen to Ange Postecoglou when he loses a match or doesn't win. I'm not changing. This is my philosophy. I'm sticking to it. So then these guys at the lower level think, oh, well, it's good enough for him. It's good enough for me. You just feel like sometimes people, the individuality's gone out the game.
Well, yeah,
that's the point. Whether it's players on the pitch or the managers themselves, individuality's gone out the game.
I just think it's total flawed thinking as well. And like, look, I don't want to keep talking about West Brom because I'm a West Brom fan, but like that's why I think Corberan's been successful is because he seems one of the few managers. Just this is in the Championship anyway, where he has no qualms with changing. So like against Sunderland, for example,
I was going to say we saw it midweek.
He went to get the point. We've got quite a few injuries at the minute. We didn't, we had some key players missing. Sunderland brilliant at home. He obviously went there, set up to try and get the point. Just defend, hold on to it, frustrate Sunderland, and it worked. And we'll play Preston at the weekend in the next game. We'll be a lot more attack minded. We'll go for it, and we'll play more on the front foot. And that's what he does well, and he gets praise, for doing that. I just don't think there's enough managers who do that nowadays. They really don't. And again, it's like we could have another pod and talk about it. We could have a whole pod discussing it, but just seems to be just the kind of way coaching is headed. That you've got to have your one style of play, your one approach. And that's it. You stick to it, every week, regardless who you're up against, regardless of how you're doing. I don't know whether that, again, like I don't want to kind of tail off it, but I don't know if again, that transcends to just like, these coaches and how they're being taught that, that's you're putting everything, all your eggs in one basket. Do you know what I mean? On the training patch that you've only got time really to kind of drill that into and, absolutely lock down that one, approach, that one idea, and that's it. And you just got to, do you see what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's a really interesting discussion,
again,
isn't it?
Listen, and I think it's a great point. Let's have a pod about this. Maybe we'll get Connor on as well. And,
I think so.
But I just to kind of finish up on it, I think, you're on about kind of coaching and getting them in and getting your idea in. I think managers now feel like they've got got to overcoach, or there's a lack of time on the training field due to games, so they don't want to adapt. Whereas years gone by, managers from maybe the 90s, early 90s would change to suit opponent, change from game to game. It was more of there was less influence on athleticism and sports science. It was guys who's playing football. But I think, as you say, worth a revisit that, because there's loads of facets to go to. Let's finish up then with Watford, because Tom Cleverley's done a great job. It's a great start. I have to say, I thought Bristol City played well in spells, created some chances. Bachmann made a couple of saves. Hirakawa, who I really like. I've got a real fascination for players from the Far East in the Championship this season. They're everywhere, aren't they? They're absolutely everywhere.
There's been a big influx, hasn't there? Definitely.
Even Iwata in League One at Blues, I think, is an interesting watch. But Naki Wells had a chance. He's getting on a bit, but still, a bit of a threat up top. They just couldn't find a way past. And then, I think it's a second half strike. I'm going to say his name right. Chekvatadze plays a nice little ball out wide, and Andrews just finds the bottom corner. What do you make of Watford? Do you think that they're genuine playoff contenders this year?
I'm starting to lean that way, mate. Yeah. I wasn't too sure at the start of the season. It's hard to tell sometimes, isn't it? Because Cleverley obviously came in towards the end of last season. He steadied the ship. They had a decent little run under him to finish the season off. And then you kind of, they've obviously started this season well, and, kind of, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 games into the season, you're thinking, well, they riding the crest of the wave a little bit here, from trying to carry things on from last season. And again, I'm always kind of a great believer in that, a new manager always takes a little bit of time for opposition to kind of suss them out a little bit in terms of, how they set up and their approach and combating that and so on. But the longer it goes on, they're just continuing to pick up points, and kind of look at some of the, the results they've had. They beat, absolutely hammered Sheffield Wednesday a few games back, 6-2, and beat Middlesbrough not that far back as well. And I think the thing as well is that they at the start of the season they were kind of really entertaining, easy on the eye. They were scoring lots of goals. It was almost like their philosophy was like, well, if you score 2, we'll score 3 kind of attitude, which, was brilliant. And, their fans were absolutely loving it. But it does seem in recent weeks that they've kind of added a little bit of grit into their, into their game as well. Because, obviously, like you said, they beat Bristol City 1-0. They beat Oxford 1-0. The last game at home prior to that. They're now being able to win ugly as well, which I always think is, a great asset to have, to be able to still win matches when you're not particularly playing well or at your best. So, and, I was having a look at, so obviously with that win, they've jumped, leapfrogged us and gone into the playoffs. And I was having a look at who their next 3 games are. They've got QPR at home this weekend, and then they've got Cardiff away and Hull away. So, they've got 3 on paper.
Could be 9 points. They'll be expecting
3 nice games.
We can get 9 points there.
Yeah, 3 nice games coming up. And like you said, if they can get 9 points from those matches, which, you've got to fancy them in all 3 of those games because, they pick up points away from home as well as at Vicarage Road. They could be sitting in a real nice position come the end of December going into the new year. So, yeah, I'll be honest with you. As a West Brom, mate.
Did they worry you?
That's what I was about to say, mate. As a West Brom fan, I'm starting to get a little worried about them because I just think that they're, they seem to be just like I said, adapting and being able to win. A bit ugly now. Grind out a few results, like I said, a few 1-0 wins where they haven't played well, and they've obviously leapfrogged us. So, yeah, they're worrying me a little bit. I think I said to you, like one of the last pods we did, was that from the teams who were outside the top 6 at that point in time, I think Watford and Millwall are 2 who I think could be those teams this year that push the other teams that are sat above them for those playoff spots, because I just think those 2, yeah, they're looking dangerous at the moment. Both of them are. So, yeah, a little bit worried. And I think the other thing as well is, one thing we're struggling for that they haven't been is there's goals. They seem to have goals from all over the pitch. They've got some attacking players who are red hot form at the moment, but their defenders as well seem to be popping up. They seem to be decent from set pieces. Also, they're getting goals from all over the pitch. So, yeah, I am definitely worried about Watford. And yeah, just big hats off to Cleverley, really, because I just didn't see it coming. To be honest with you, like I said, I know they finished last season, positively. I don't think I had them to be in and around the playoffs this season, but I think they're going to be, looking at it. I can't see any reason why they'd tail off. They look to be getting better, if anything. So,
just on Cleverley, he made a point after the match saying he wants to see his side be more entertaining. He said combine the performance from Friday with a mindset from Tuesday night, and that would be perfect for him. Is that something you would agree with? That maybe they gave Bristol City too many chances midweek?
Yeah, I think so. Look, Bristol City, we've said it before, haven't we? It must be really infuriating being a Bristol City fan, because they are, on their day they can beat anyone, and they give absolutely everyone a game. But they're always that mid-table team. So, sometimes you never know which Bristol City you're going to get. But yeah, but like I said, the positive, he's right. Like you said, they did ride their luck. Bristol City played well, probably unlucky not to get something from the game. But just tying into what I said before, I just think it's a massive positive when you can get 3 points and not play well. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. At any level, it's a bit of a football cliche, but at any level, if you have that ability to grind wins out and not play particularly well. And look, he's right, and then, he's just saying what the fans want to hear, I think, and that they don't want to. Like I said, they've had a couple of 1-0 wins at home lately, so they'll be wanting to see more. They'll be wanting to see winning games more comfortably, a few more goals, especially after what they got a taste of earlier on in the season. So, but no, it's he's doing a fantastic job, and like I said, I'm starting as a West Brom fan. I'm starting to worry because they're doing things that we're not at this moment in time. And like I said, they've already leapfrogged us. So, we'll see.
Listen, just before we jump on to the midweek fixtures, the weekend's fixtures, I want to talk to you about West Brom and Robert Earnshaw's kind of post-match comments after the 0-0 draw. You said yourself maybe 10 minutes ago that Carlos Corberán went up there and engineered that draw, and he'll be delighted coming away with a point, which you were before kickoff. You'd have bit your hand off for a point, you were saying to myself. So Earnshaw said, no, not impressed, not the West Brom way. They need to be going to these grounds and trying to win games and trying to create chances. What do you take from that?
I think it's a little bit harsh. I do kind of get where he's coming from a little bit, because I don't think in terms of personnel, quality in both squads. I think if anything, we probably have got a little bit more quality and a little bit more depth than Sunderland have. So I think he's got a point in the sense that I think we should have done more in that game against Sunderland, in attacking wise. But then, you've got to take into consideration, the start Sunderland have had and the fact that they're unbeaten at home. That's where they're getting a lot of their joy, is at the Stadium of Light. Big fan base, crowd behind them. And also the fact, we've been struggling a bit of late as well, in front of goal. You've got to look at all these different factors, I think. And we've got a lot of injuries. That's the biggest one, is, defensive, in defence as well. That's where we've got the most, most of our injuries. So it's one of them. I kind of see what he's saying. There is a bit of a point there, but I do think he was a bit too harsh with it. I think, like you said, I think you ask any West Brom before the game, would we have taken a point? There would have been very few who said, no, we've got to be trying to win this game. So, but I do think that kind of then leads on to, the biggest concern we have at the moment is just how much we're struggling in front of goal. It's very much a case if, Josh Meyer doesn't score, then, we ain't getting on the score sheet. We really are. I was looking earlier that, you look at the top 6 teams, we're on 18 goals for. Well, the rest of them are on 31, 24, 26, 29, 26. There's a big gap there between the amount of goals those teams have scored and how many we've scored. So, it's something we got to sort out 100%. If we want to get in those playoffs come the end of the season, then we've got to sort it out. It's as simple as that. Being good defensively inside at the back, it's great. It's a great starting point. Like I said to you earlier, if you can keep the opposition out, you're going to get a point. But you can't get too many draws. This is why we've dropped out of the playoffs now, is because we're not turning these draws into wins. So we're very difficult to beat, but we're very easy to defend against as well. It seems at the moment, we're not scoring many goals. So it's concerning. Like I just said, touched on Watford. They're winning games in different ways. They're grinding games out, but then they're having some real fruitful performances where they're banging a few goals in as well, and their attackers are doing well. So we've got to sort it out fast, or we might see ourselves getting cut adrift a little bit from those playoff spots.
Okay, let's have a quick look at the weekend. I know we'll push for time, got 5 minutes left, but there's only really one game to discuss, and that's the Friday night game at Bramall Lane. Sheffield United against Sunderland. Sheffield United, blitzed Oxford midweek. It was a real sort of kind of rounded performance. Another clean sheet at home. You look at Sunderland, they're coming into this off the back of 5 draws. draw with yourselves, Millwall, Coventry, Preston, QPR. The last time they won, fun enough, was also against Oxford as well. I can't see anything other than a home win.
I think you're right. I do fancy Sheffield United to edge it, but I tell you what, it'll be a tough game. Look, I was really, really impressed with Sunderland against us. I know you watched some of it, but they were just relentless in their press, in just winning the ball back. And then when they had the ball, they were really effective on the ball. And I don't want to blow my own trumpet, mate, but it's the thing that they're lacking is just that bit of extra quality. I thought the chap up front, who's the lad up front for Sunderland?
Ego Bar, is it? Or?
Yeah, he seemed to turn a bit of a corner and he banged a few goals in, but they've dried up again, haven't they? And again, they seem to me just to be lacking that really prolific front man. Because I think if they had, a real bagsman in front of goal, I think they would have been picking up more points. Because I tell you what, defensively they're solid. Midfield, they've got some great midfielders as well.
William Isidore.
They're a really well drilled outfit, mate. I was really, really impressed with just how they played against ourselves and just completely nullified any threat we had. But again, I just think they're lacking, a couple of players of like real quality, especially in front of goal. And I think that's what Sheffield United have. I think that's the difference between the two teams, is that Sheffield United, again, very well drilled, good defensively, but I just think they've got more in attack. They've got more of a goal threat. And then at home as well, the crowd behind them. I think, I fancy a Sheffield United win. But I tell you what, that'll be a good game, that one. It'll be really interesting on that one.
Just to pick up on what you said about your own side, in the draws and how you've not turned them into wins and it saw you sort of fall in the table. Is Regis Lebris got to be careful of that? Because you say, 5 draws on the bounce, it's heading that way. It could be zero points on Friday night as well. And then you start, you're in a bit of a rut.
Yeah, I think, mate, if they play like they did against us and they play like they did against Millwall, they'll win more games than they'll draw, I think, because I think, that game against Millwall was an entertaining game. They did create some good chances in that game. The Millwall keeper made some saves. Millwall gave it a good go as well, and I think a point was a fair result. Look, I think Sunderland were the better team against ourselves in terms of, their attacking intent, chances they created, and just overall control of the game. I think if they play like they did against us in Millwall, mate, they'll be winning more games than we're losing. I just think the game on Friday, they're coming up against, for me, the best team in the division. They're going to be one of the automatics for sure. I think Sheffield United. So, but I don't know. It was a bit of an eye opener for me because you know full well that I've been kind of a few times, consistently I've been saying, I fancy Sunderland to dip. And you could argue a little bit that they have of late. Like you said, they've had a few draws, but I was like, that was the first time I'd watched them for a while, the full game, and I was just really impressed in terms of what the manager's done, how well drilled they were, especially how effective they were in the press and winning the ball back and then putting the pressure straight back on the opposition. So that'll be a spicy one. I'm looking forward to that. To be fair, I'm gonna make sure I watch that game because I think it'll be a good test for Sheffield United as well. It'll be, if they can win that comfortably, then I think if the rest of the division we've got to be worried. But I've got a feeling Sunderland will give them a really good game. That'll be close, that one.
All eyes will probably on Coventry Saturday at 3:00. Obviously, Cardiff calling there. Any other games that catch your eye? Give us one.
I don't know. It's a bit of an odd one because that is the standout game. The rest of it, there's not really any kind of top of the table.
I wanted to put this to you, and we've kind of missed it. I know what we've done there, but Swansea seem to have gone a bit of a resurgence. They're picking up points, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And again, it was odd because when I looked at the table, I expected them to be higher, if that makes sense, because I know they've had some good results of late, and they obviously just narrowly lost to Leeds, put in a really good performance against Leeds. Should have got something from that game. Yeah, I think their fans will be absolutely chuffed, and I think that's probably, you want to be out of the limelight. I think, and people maybe not talking you up and just kind of, steadily going along, your business. I think they're on what? I think they're on about. Let me have a look at the table. Yeah, they're on 22 points, so they're 5 points off the playoffs at this moment in time. But yeah, they seem to be really, solid, absolutely solid, giving everyone they come up against the game. And there's nothing stopping them, putting a bit of a run together and getting in that playoff conversation. But again, they're one of so many teams around that kind of mid-table that I just feel like there's definitely some quality there. There's definitely some ability, but a lot of it for me comes down to squad depth. Being able to bring quality off the bench late on in games to see games out, and I think that's where they'll struggle. You've probably got a decent starting 11 on paper, but then anything after that, they're struggling. So, but yeah, been impressive of late, and it'll be interesting to see what they do. But they don't seem to draw Swansea. I'm just looking at their last few results, and it's lost 1-1, lost 1. So it's everything or nothing with them, which is probably quite exciting, isn't it, being a Swansea fan at the minute? So.
I thought you were going to carry on, and you just stopped.
I'm done, mate. I'm done.
Listen,
Sorry,
I think you're saying that their fans will be happy. Look, they're above Cardiff. They'll be delighted. That's probably all that matters.
And Bristol, they got a bit of a thing with Bristol as well, haven't they? They're sat above them on goal difference at the minute, so they'll be happy with that.
We'll keep an eye on that. Listen, Tom, thanks very much for the hour. We've gone over and above. We'll come back, and again next week as well. We'll try and definitely arrange this kind of off-topic chat about the coaching and where it's gone, because I think that was we kind of rambled for 20 minutes, and we were getting into the thick of it. So we'll get another chap on, and we'll have a good chat about that as well. So I think
I was just going to say I think so, mate, because I think all these sackings, it all ties into the bigger picture, in my opinion. All these managers losing their jobs, there's definitely a conversation to be had about it, I think. So yeah, for sure, get Connor in as well.
Absolutely. Okay then. Listen, people have been dipping in and out throughout. I've saw you. I know you haven't left any comments, but I've definitely saw you. So give us a like, leave us a comment if you can. And as I say, we'll catch you again on the other side. Cheers.